see Sherman's statue.
Barges of pine that they set afire floating into the boat. It's amazing that he won New Orleans. It's amazing that he won in Mobile Bay. In front of him was his ship was the Hartford. You know the Admiral Farragut and Farragut Square? Do you know what it's made out of? It's made out of the melted propeller of the Hartford.
Winfield Scott Hancock.
Well, he was almost as large as his namesake, Winfield Scott. You know the story of the Scott in Scott Circle? Scott Circle here in town. There's Winfield Scott, of course. Art historians consider it the worst horse in town. And it's a heart always had. And he had no children. And the artist was told to sculpt him. So he sculpted it on there. And it has a very delicate head, very delicate back. But right before it was time to cast it, some, I guess, new artist expected it to be all the way down. And that's why it was the artist was luckily there's a wonderful monument there to the women who died in
Lincoln.
and 21 women were blown to bits. I think they're made of and so they were buried at the Congressional Cemetery. How the town people of Washington hired Washington. He wanted a very big building, an imposing building, a classical building. He wanted something that would do honor to all of the men that he cared about and to his own son. He was very well traveled, and this is modeled after the Farnese Palace, I think in Milan. It's a very Italian Renaissance building.
National Building Museum.
It's wonderful. You've never been inside?
I don't think so.
It's the biggest columns in the United States. Some say the biggest columns in the world.
Is that right?
It's startling. It's so amazing.
They have a lot of them now.
He wanted this to be a Renaissance palace, and he wanted, or I'm sorry, a classical.
Now this is Meigs you're talking about.
Meigs.
Yeah.
And he wanted it to have a frieze like the Parthenon. But the Parthenon, the frieze there is allegorical figures. They don't represent. I haven't counted them, but there's an estimate there are 1,355 men marching and rowing and limping and riding around the building. Any guess on how many bricks are in the building?
Inside the building. Absolutely gorgeous.
Second floor, back one.
Here, and he also has some elements of the frieze that I want to go to order. The hat of this officer here, these banners and flags. They're sun molded. You create a mold and then you can make as many of these as you want. And they put them in random order. Well, not random, varied order. They don't go in the same 6 notes. Right here is great. And the terracotta, like the Parthenon, holds up very well. And this has been on this wall for 120, 112 years. And the relief is just perfect.
Yeah, it does hold up well.
You can see they've got chicken wire in these little holes.
Albert Pike, Confederate general at Pea Ridge, somewhat of a rogue.
So they make these Gilgos containers. They think it's going to sail through because all the masons will go for it. And suddenly the GAR gets rid of it. They want to erect a statue of Albert. It was a shame because
Meade.
Meade was a pain in the ass in many cases, but he had a very loyal following in Pennsylvania. This is one of the only statues donated to the American people by the state, and it was a gift to the state of Pennsylvania. You think? Oh, really? Well, I can tell you, the people got this.
Residents of Bloomfield.
Anderson's Cottage, the room where Lincoln wrote First Draft of Emancipation.
What was that? So this is where he
On the grounds of the U.S. Soldier and Airmen in Washington.
Yeah. Did you ever find out where the furniture was for here? That was somewhere over here. And, the desk was over here.
Original pieces of furniture.
Tabb died, didn't he? Was it Tabb that died? Willie died first. He died in the White House of fever. Yeah, I think he had typhoid. In fact, Lincoln had him dug up 2 or 3 times.
A correction. This is where Lincoln wrote his final draft of the Emancipation Proclamation.
I think these came from Europe. During the colonial times, I think they were brought over.
And it was here when Lincoln was here?
Here when Lincoln was here. And that tower, there was when Lincoln was there. You heard Nick say that's where they signaled guys. Watch the Battle of Fort Stevens.
Awesome. Tree was here when Lincoln was here. Used to climb the tree with children. Anderson's Cottage, Lincoln's retreat. Would bring the whole family out here. Practically the way it was when he was here.
This position is first day, let's say 2 to 5 o'clock. All this initial fighting is taking place south of us. Prentiss has formed up a position, strong position here, and he'll hold it longer. They'll use to hold that position for most of the afternoon. So this is, I fought with Prentiss in the Hornet's Nest. It's from here to the middle and then all the people.
But early on, over on the left flank of the Union, there was a discussion in the movie about one of the European officers had formed the
Right,
remaining.
and we'll hit that.
Hollister.
That's a little bit we do in 50 years. That the argument in favor of archaeology that it's a history book that you only get to read once.
That's right.
And if you don't keep some of those books on the shelf, the technology gets better. When we have the technology, there won't be anything to learn on it. The other part of that story was the kid also pulls that a handful of these little copper. The man that would be best qualified to tell them that is Isham Harris, governor of Tennessee when the war started. Buell runs him out of Nashville. He joins on to Johnson's staff, and he is the last man that is dispatched from Johnson's side, and when he comes back he finds Johnson reeling in the saddle. So try to contact Isham Harris. Come down and help us mark the spot. No answer. Don't get any answer at all. Superintendent, or the historian's name is David W. Reed. He goes to several of Johnson's friends and asks them to intercede. And finally, they go to Harris. Harris says, okay, I'll do it. So the correspondence, Isham Harris is going to come to Corinth by train, and Reed, the park historian, will meet him down there. And Isham Harris at this time, back in Congress, senator from the state of Tennessee. So 2 horses, shows up at the train depot, picks Harris up, and as soon as they're minded and starting to ride back up here, then Reed has got question after question. Here's a man that was intimately involved in the battle, just a world of stuff he wants to know. Isham Harris raises his hand. He says, it's been 32 years since the battle, and that time I have read nothing about the battle, have written nothing about it, have talked to very few people about it. And because of that, I have in my mind's eye a clear picture of what happened that morning. And I'm on a very specific task today. I think I can complete that task, but until I do, I don't want to discuss the battle because it may cloud my memory or mix up that picture I have. He says, another thing I should tell you, I'm opposed to everything that you're doing with the park. Better to obliterate all trace of the battle for the participants and their children. And after that, it was a very quiet ride from Corinth, 20 miles up here to Pittsburgh Landing. But they come into the park headquarters, and all these people have heard that Isham Harris is coming. He's going to mark the spot where Johnson fell. So, just a slew of people. And historian Reed goes over to him and explains that Johnson doesn't want, or Harris doesn't want to be bothered, and that everyone needs to haul back. So he says, okay, Senator, what shall we do? I wonder, did he say Senator or Governor? Never thought about that. Probably Governor. Governor, what do you want to do? He says, well, take me to the extreme south end on the Corinth Road, and I want to follow it step by step. So they hot-footed it all the way back down, and Harris would describe what happened, and then say, okay, now I want to move to such and such a place, and would describe it. You're the historian, find us the quickest way to get there. So they began on the Corinth Road. They'd come through a Union camp, and he'd say, yes, I remember this. We stopped for water. It was about 9 o'clock. The General sent a dispatch, or this is where he retrieved the famous tin cup and said this is the only booty he'll take that day, blah, 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 blah. And they're sort of crisscrossing, and they're coming up to this location. And here was this large oak tree, and Harris turns to Reed and says, this is the place. I remember finding Johnson reeling in the saddle here, and they were on horseback where the mortuary monument is, under the shade of this tree. Of course, it's bigger because it's 30 years later, but this is the spot. One of the first people sent off of Johnson's party would have been a surgeon. It was like Union wounded, stop and take care of. And then throughout the day, he's sending people all around. He's acting like a damn division commander instead of the highest-ranking Confederate soldier.
He's on the line.
He's on the line, and he's leading a charge up towards the peach orchard. And you can see we're at the edge of the peach orchard, the old Nance George cabin, the only one of the Civil War buildings that survived on the battlefield today. He comes back after that one. Fire eater has probably taken 4 or 5 bullets, and Johnson holds his shoe up, and a bullet has taken off the heel of the shoot. And he says, well, they almost got me on that one. So they're about in this location. Bowen's troops, or somebody is a little slow back there, so turns to Isham Harris, go give him a message, see if you can spruce him up a little bit. So about the time it would take to get to the far wood line and back, that's how long Isham Harris is gone. When he comes back, here's Johnson falling off the saddle, grabs him down, a few other soldiers come up, they take him down the hill into the gully, and 20 minutes later, Albert Sidney Johnson is bled to death, the highest ranking American soldier ever killed in battle, any rebel wars. I would theorize that in that attack, he caught that slow bullet behind the knee, started bleeding. The blood was all going down in that boot. He is sore as, Lord, if he shot the heel off, I guess that would be enough so you wouldn't feel a whole lot. Doesn't realize what's happening. And initially when they take him down, they can't find the wound. And it's probably been going on a long time, but 20 minutes later he's dead. That's why the marker's there today. That's why we know this is the spot. Isham Harris goes back to the landing, meets with all of these people, greetings with all his old friends. So 1,000 years from now, we want somebody to come back and still see an oak tree marking that site. And even though, as you can see, this one is not much left. We talked about taking a piece of it just so we've got it in the study collection to say we have some wood. But as far
Yeah, acting like a brigadier instead of a full general.
Maybe 200 yards back is where the 5th Ohio Cavalry would have been camped. Great.
and try to put a clay layer to keep it that way. Trying to have the right brand of fish in there to keep the algae from growing, so you got all that sort of, all that sticker, and so I probably talked to Tennessee River Museum, you need to go there. We have that pipe on display over in that museum.
Why did they build none?
Who knows? Could have been a religious center, could have been a protection site in the middle of all this farmland.
It's not a burial ground?
There were burials in Mine Sea. What we're seeing here is that the Tennessee River makes a big turn, hits right at this bank, and they're having terrible erosion problems. Mine the largest one here, every time we have a high water, it's cutting away. We had 13 inches of rain.
These are Indian mounds
And
within the park site.
they had found pieces at Cahokia that they think
Tennessee River in the background.
The last person I talked to,
Hillcrest Cemetery, Holly Springs, Mississippi, April the 18th, 1997.
Charge! Yeah, that's what they say.
We're a little late.
My father lost everything. He sent me south to Salem, Mississippi to teach in 1838. 2 years later, at the tender age of 21, I was admitted to the bar and began a law practice in Holly Springs. My advice was sought, and my counsel well respected by the people of Holly Springs and considered me a community leader. I was known around town as the man of good deeds. The local churches were very stern in their admonitions to their parishioners concerning their social behavior. No one was too consecrated or too prominent to be called before the local boards to discuss rumors of their behavior. The preacher said time and time again how gravely concerned the church was with their participation in dancing and other such amusement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you know, these are the...
Off without leaving me any sponge. You know I want to give Mother a comb, brush, and mirror, and I want you to send me $10 or $20 maybe. When you send me the money, please address the letter to me, for I want it to be a surprise to Mother. I'll have to get a lot of other presents, so I'll be obliged to you if you come across with about $15. All are well, your loving son, Walter. P.S. Please send as soon as possible, and be sure to address the letter to me so that I will give her a surprise. Don't be afraid that the money will be spent foolishly, for I am an old head.
That soldier's buried over there, and I think 4 Indian soldiers buried over there. You can kind of see over there.
This actually.
Cotton, old times there and I, forgotten, look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. In Dixieland where I was born in early autumn frosty morning, look away, look away, look away, Dixieland. And I wish I was in Dixie, hooray, hooray. In Dixieland I'll take my stand to live and die in Dixie. Away, away, away down south in Dixie. Away, away, away down south. Way down south, way down south in Dixie. The breakfast store, he has loosed the faithful lightning. Love is terrible, swift sword is true. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
We have Mr. John Haynes is going to tell us what I'm looking at. John, would you like to say something and tell my audience what we're looking at?
This is the 1 acre of National Park Service property that was reserved back in the, I think around the 1920s. The monument was put up around 1957, and along with other monuments on the trail. Actually, the only improvements made on the battlefield up until June the 10th, which is the date of the battle last year, when 836 acres of the battlefield were acquired and preserved for history. To your cemetery on the right, there's the graves of 100 Confederate soldiers, approximately 100 that were killed in the battle and are located here.
Are they unknown or known?
They came back around 7 years ago. The Sons of Confederacy group and identified who they thought they were and placed
I
stones,
see.
Individually for each grave.
Suppose they got these from the federal government?
I don't think so. I think it's probably. You think they did? No, I don't think so. I don't think that'll go to this money. It starts down here, 4/10 of a mile, and curves up this hill. And the parking lot will be right up in the road, off the road. You come down here and hike the first 4/10, and then eventual trails, if you look on the map, loop all the way around 2.5 miles around the battlefield. So we got.
Now, if you're so good, would you please find it?
And move right through the crowd and inform her. I didn't meet in the middle. Didn't have the southern come out of the woods over there. That's a beautiful view coming out of the.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's meeting out in the middle. Trim up a little field, shape it up, cut it down. Like I said, 1 or 2 reenactments. I mean, you can put them all the way over that far ridge over there and make them come.
Yeah.
To give a good feeling. The marker is actually, you know, just probably 700-800 yards straight above us now. They were coming up, and you can see how they were worn out. They were climbing these hills coming up to the battlefield. Yeah.
On the damn, what did that gun weigh? 11 pounds?
It's heavy.
It was a hot day.
Well, they'd been a forced march too, trying to get up here.
Well, yeah, the last morning, all day they went off. So what we'll do on the top of this is where the interpretive trail will be. You really can't see, there's too much brush, we're going to have to clear that out. But you'll put the interpretive trail for the bridge up here, the first one. We'll look at it from the bottom side, but you'll put it on the ridge so you can see both sides of the battlefield and you can see how they funneled. Then over in that angle is where the creek will be, and you'll reconstruct the old bridge, but you'll be able to hopefully see. It may change, I don't know. I get a historian out here.
The Natchez Trail. Say hello.
Hello, Eddie. How are you? We're on the Natchez Trace, Sunken Road.
The Meriwether Lewis Monument on the Natchez Trace, near the spot where he supposedly committed suicide. No, it's not broken off. That's the type monument it is. April 17th, 1998, trip to Vicksburg, Mississippi. Jim Lighthouser, Dick Meyer, Ed Hall. Hampton Inn, where we stayed. This is right directly across from the Vicksburg Military Park, although you're not seeing it here. We're getting ready to go into Vicksburg to drive past a cemetery to see what it's like. More later. You are looking at our super roomy rental car.
Recognition for their contribution and sacrifices Senator, and always to honor their memory.
Vicksburg, number 77, United Daughters of the Confederacy. In spite of the fact they should tagline that they were Catholics. Lieutenant General.
Isham Warren Garrett, a native of North Carolina, born in Wake County. Graduated from State Uni, studied law, moved to Marion, Alabama, etc., etc. 20th Alabama Infantry.
Further behind. Yet another
You do
reason
not
Dick
see
of
this very
racism
often.
why it's your fault and mine. Is there someplace where...
Look at this. Noah Worth, Outlaws.
Arrested at Odenton, March 15th, 1990, yes, such and such. Served out his term at Annapolis, paroled honorably. And
Now, the military park at Vicksburg. We have a paid guided tour.
something you might be interested in when you're down to Canada is see the plots there? And they said, oh, you found a couple.
Change hands more than once during the Civil War. Vicksburg didn't, but Jackson.
This is the surrender site on July 4th, 3rd,
This is where they met on the 3rd.
1864. 3. Get it right in a minute. Mr. Lighthouser, tell us what it is.
On this site in July of 1863, July 3rd, General Pemberton met with General Grant under a tree located where that substitute tree is, and more or less where that cannon is, to discuss terms of surrender. They did not come to an agreement. However, an exchange of letters later that night did consummate the surrender, and the following day, July 4th, the Confederates surrendered. That tree didn't last, the original tree didn't last, it probably lasted about a half hour after this.
Yeah. The Shirley House. The only remaining structure during the battle.
Well, that's been really, of course, the effect has been rebuilt. Yeah, chimney and the roof like that's unusual, unless they added on.
Yeah, you're thinking at one point that was the end of the house there.
Well, it could be, but it's unusual.
The Illinois Memorial. Very, very impressive, as you can see. Our guide is speaking. Isn't this something? Now this is open. You can see the clouds.
It's worth going through. This isn't the one Ed Bars found about 1958 or something, is it?
56.
That one Bars is the one that found it?
Bars wrote the Cairo, the Ironclad.
Didn't
he find it
though?
He was
The Cairo.
He was here.
Gunboat sunk in the Yazoo River. Union gunboat. First boat sunk by electric mine, you might say.
Those braces got to be reproductive.
The light-colored wood is a cradle to hold the dark-colored wood. Anything dark is original. The light-colored holds it in.
Yeah, hold it all
cradle
together.
so you can see the shape of the boat.
Yeah.
This is where the mine hit. The dark sections of the wood, the original wood. The light section is the crater.
But the Waterways Experience Station is a one-of-a-kind thing. In hydraulics, the only rivals were there. But when they found it, Fry was raised to Cairo and one preserved it.
Jim, we ain't seen nothing like this before. You know that? Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
And they say that it's so little erosion on those engines that they were able to turn some, and that's when the majority really brought it up. Fresh water. You notice their way of raising these cannons, these wedge down there, they're using these screws.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
sites in Canada. This one is the one there. Those two. I can't imagine having just arbitrary different kinds of cannons because you have to supply them different shot and what have you. There must have been some rationale behind it. Or as you say, maybe it's quicker to throw them together quickly and then seductive reasoning, but it works.
Hatfield looked like when you brought it back. That direction. Yeah. That'll take you right. That's Cherry Street there, and take you right past the courthouses. Okay. In 1863, the river came up beyond where you see these buildings now, curved around, came back down on the other side of the railroad track. The river changed its course in 1866, creating Lake Centennial. The water that you see through the trees there. See, at Grant's time, the river made this curve, and in between you had about a mile of land. And it changed its course, shut it off, and well, there's some wells on the horses.
Lloyd Tillman.
Mm-hmm.
From where?
Kentucky, I believe.
Born in Maryland and came to the war by way of Kentucky.
Yeah, he's born in
Claiborne, Maryland.
Yeah, Eastern Shore, Maryland. Yeah.
The Vicksburg Courthouse. Court in the old courthouse.
Look at the fixtures, the light fixtures.
Yeah. The front or back, the one overlooking then the Mississippi River. the Mississippi, of course, the Mississippi River has been diverted.
It's not the Mississippi River. Don't tell people.
This group here, we welcome everybody, and the 9 people that boarded first, this nice group of young men and ladies are from Duncanville, Texas, over here, 1800. So trying to claim some land for Spain. So the flew down elected the main island after the Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto. Barges, they're loaded all the way up to the bottom of those covered watertight lids over there. So you can see that barge here is drawing about 11 foot. So they'll draw anywhere from 9 to 11 foot when they're loaded down like that. So you got 11 foot of grain underneath the water right now, and then probably another 5 foot above the water. They separated the coal stuff for the paper mill, and the good stuff, they run it up that conveyor over there.
So
Now, some of y'all may have already become a little bit acquainted like we did. We might could have turned it around a little bit if they had jumped in and helped us on. But here in Vicksburg, I mentioned we don't have that many old houses because when the Yankees was
The old courthouse seen from the river.
That's our beautiful old stately courthouse up there. And that building was started back in construction in 1858 and it was completed in 1860. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is the very location out there on the front lawn 135 years ago, this coming 4th of July. The Northern Commander, General Ulysses S. Grant, and the Southern Commander of the Confederate Forces here at Vicksburg, they met up there, and that's exactly where the surrender did take place. And over the years now, there's been a half a dozen presidents of the United States give a talk in the old building, name a few of them for you. First one was Zachary Taylor, and the last one was President Eisenhower, and in between times, Mr. Teddy Roosevelt. Come down here and pay us a couple of visits. Of course, the honorable and respected Confederate President, Mr. Jefferson Davis, he spent quite a bit of time around the old courthouse himself.
Hold them up more. I want a picture of this house. Two? Yeah, but we're not by banks and banks all the way. There's no trees.
Grand Gulf, Mississippi.
$1998.
Port Gibson, Mississippi. It's a Sunday morning, but not much going on. Notice the 1817 on the house.
Yeah.
Windsor.
Windsor.
Caught on fire from a lit cigarette, 1890s.
When was it built?
Not before. And they flued it with,
concrete or?
I don't know, cement, concrete, I don't know.
You talk about some real artisans to put something like that together.
Note the indentations in the columns. This is really something. Man who built it died about a month after he finished it in 1860. Schaefer House, where the first shot, the Battle of Port Gibson, was fired. Well, it may be on the National Register of Historic Places, but you can see it's in bad shape. Not beyond repair, though. Various markers about the battle. I was now in enemy territory with a vast river and the stronghold of Vicksburg between me and my base of supplies. But I was on dry land on the same side of the river with the enemy. All the campaigns, labors, hardships, and exposures from the months of December previously to this time that had been made and endured were for the accomplishments of this one objective, one object. What
do I want here? 9?
Three River Stadium? No, it's a good question.
Do I want 9 or
Boulevard of the Allies?
Three River Stadium. What is today? August 20 what?
You want to clear?
23rd, 1998.
Is that the Hilton there?
Go straight.
What about right? Do we got any parking?
You know, it's we've got tremendous support from Maryland for it.
Chattanooga.
We've done over 4,000.
Chickamauga.
Maybe another 1,000, arguably 2,000 more, and we're done. That's it.
And it gives you the option eventually to own it in fee simple.
And the fee simple is going to be viable.
That's right.
It's not going to be $5 million an acre. It's going to be ag land.
Yep.
Or I think the next iteration.
Those hotel buildings.
Yeah.
20th century. Yeah, the front side of them is a whole lot more attractive than the back side.
Are they still used?
Yes, it's the Bavarian Sky Harbour. A pumped water system, so that there is a constant flow of water over.
Now your $8 ticket down.
If you've ever heard of the Crystal hamburger chain, the owner of that lived there.
What are these? 19? What?
Most of these houses are early 20th century, 1920s, 30s.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money up here.
There is serious money. But what are these homes going for?
A shack in the middle of the mountain starts at about 200.
How about these babies with the million?
I don't know for certain. I have been.
Look at that mountain.
Water permeable limestone, the sandstone cap has not eroded as much, and what it has left us with is sort of a wall, or what's called locally the Palisades, right on the very top of the mountain. And so you can be walking up, and most of the gap is the place where the sandstone cap is broken down enough to allow you to get up on the very top. The stage, the battlefield for Chattanooga. The wartime city of Chattanooga was just where the downtown high-rise buildings are today. A little town of about 900 people living in town. Total of 2,500 people got their mail from the post office in Chattanooga. It was very much a frontier-type town, much like what you'd expect to see in the Dodge City of the movies of the 40s and 50s. Wooden front buildings and the like. Didn't really extend any further south than where those high-rise buildings are today. After the Union Army's defeat out there on the rock is this structure right here. Well, the key to understanding where Grant was standing is this rock right here.
Ulysses Lighthouser.
Let's see the profile, Jim.
Now point.
Right there.
Reason that Grant was standing here is that one of the ways to get to the top of the mountain at the time of the Civil War was, since the main road leading up here, Orland seized that on the early morning hours of October 27th at Bridgeport, Alabama, over roads that have been turned into rivers of mud by the rains of October. You know that they are just slick leather soles. I cannot imagine walking to the edge in a pair of those shoes.
Yeah, but you're a 19-year-old kid and you're never going to die.
That's right.
The rebuilt Craven's house.
There's very little
Top
identified
Lookout
Craven's
Mountain.
produced items survive. The family has a couple of pieces, and that's about it.
Whereabouts in Peru? I don't know. I should have gotten more information.
The base of Lookout Mountain at the time of the Battle of Lookout Mountain, but not right on the mountain itself.
This is misleading. Look at this. 23rd to the 27th. This doesn't cover 25th. How could they have more casualties than the Yankees attacking? So that's got to be.
Well, it's because if you look at where they are, the Confederate casualties are all here as missing. They're mostly captured.
Where'd they get killed? Along Missionary
Ridge. in the breakup on Missionary Ridge. The Texas Brigade is right here at this bend or angle too. Vaughan's brigade is in a low saddle back there. Lowry's brigade is his right flank, and it is back on another projection that sticks out to the north in that direction. Eventually it's Grand
Claiborne versus Sherman.
Here it's A.J. Smith. I'm sorry, J.A. Smith, James A. Yeah, that's the one. Wounded and died from the effects of his wounds in this attack, and this monument marks the spot where Phelps of the 38th Ohio
no idea how steep it is because of the foliage. Is that clear, more or less?
Yes, more or less. Yeah. Small tract of land.
Braxton Bragg's headquarters, where the monument is.
More to harm the Confederacy than anybody with the possible exception.
Well, no, they couldn't. For some reason,
Site of Braxton Bragg's headquarters.
That the only way to extinguish the fire was to have a demolition contractor bring his crane in and knock the building down.
Missionary Ridge.
This is where Arthur comes up, right down here. This ground, led by some of Wheeler's cavalrymen, will see Federals withdrawing over Missionary Ridge, and they will go racing down towards Chickamauga Creek to cross to pursue and attack those retreating Federals. But what did I say was along the bank of the creek right there at the ford? That stone wall. And what had the Confederates used that stone wall before on September the 10th? A cover, a barricade, and they had surprised the advance. Come charging down to the creek at Davis's Ford. Up from behind that stone wall pops a small detachment of Federal infantry. And they will deliver a volley at short range into the face of the Confederate cavalry, send them fleeing in disorder to the rear, and then the Federals will withdraw on across Missionary Ridge back to Stevens Gap. And Bragg's opportunity to have destroyed one, maybe two divisions of the 14th Corps of the Army of the Cumberland will pass as they will pull back and fortify themselves around Stevens Gap or at the base of Lookout Mountain.
Chickamauga Creek.
He gave that up to protect his.
Chickamauga Creek.
If we could get back up here. Okay, if you can squeeze down a little bit without getting wet. Okay, Greg. Where's Mac? There's Mac. Remember our opportunities to get wet?
Oh yeah, I'll find it if it's there.
Well, I think we all shared in that. You might have had the most spectacular.
Yeah, most dramatic.
dunking.
A lot of arm waving and that sort of thing.
Of Federal Cavalry. Gordon Granger's Reserve Corps is concentrating up here near Rossville Gap. Now what does Bragg want to do? He wants to get Forrest, Johnson, Walker, Buckner across the creek north of Lee and Gordon's Mill, swing them onto the Union left flank, drive the Union left flank southward, allowing Polk to cross and then Hill to cross, and he will be doing what with his army? Putting it between the Union Army and Chattanooga and crushing the Union Army against the mountains to the west and south. That's Bragg's plan. But he's got to get across Chickamauga Creek. Look at Chickamauga Creek right here. Tell me about this creek from a military perspective.
Walk across it.
You can't get your wagons up there.
Steep banks. Steep banks. The depth of the creek varies very greatly. Right here, it's relatively shallow, but just a little bit upstream and downstream, it's very deep. The depth of the water is not the big hindrance. It is the steepness of the banks. You all would do better than many of my Army officer groups. And I take them to a place where the banks are even steeper, and they can't pick that out. But it is the steepness of the banks. The wheeled vehicles cannot get into and out of this creek across right there. Now, we've had a drought. And in low water, you can actually see some of the remains of the last wooden bridge that was here at Reed's Bridge. Until this summer when the water got so low that more people saw it and they wanted to know what it was and they pulled it up. But some of the timbers of the wooden bridge were still out there in the water. They're over there right now. They've been pulled up to shore. But let's see how good I am for a wooden one-lane, two-horse wide bridge. Wasn't much of a bridge
Reed's
at all.
Bridge.
This would have taken a long time to move that many cinders.
Yes, it did.
6 or 8 feet maybe.
Why didn't we burn it?
Okay, why doesn't Minty destroy the bridge when he retreats? Well, they don't have good demolitions to blow it down. They could burn it, but how are they going to burn a bridge that is just a wooden plank floor and very little superstructure? They'd have to haul combustible material onto the bridge. That would take what? Time, and it'd also block the bridge up for their use. Is there one other way Minty could at least disable the bridge? Take the planks up. And that's what he had troops doing. But Nathan Bedford Forrest, hearing this fight, had ridden down here, and Forrest pushes some troops up, both some infantry and some of his cavalrymen, and they seize the bridge before Minty can get the planks torn off of it. And one of the first Confederates to ride across Chickamauga Creek from the east side to the west in the accomplishment of Bragg's effort plan is Nathan Bedford Forrest. He rides over the bridge, leans down and pats the young captain on the head. Infantry officer who's helping put the planks back down on the bridge says, "We need more good young men like you," and rides on to the other side.
Sorry.
Okay, you didn't get in my way.
Education.
To show the terrain of 1863. The Lafayette Road is there. We are about where this X is. More specifically, the X is on the Hague Shell Pyramid just behind me. And that's that road which you can see the back of the stop sign right over there. This field on the map is just to the east of us.
3rd Kentucky Cavalry, Confederate States of America.
There is attached to the brigade a battery of talked all about
The Wilder Monument. Chattanooga National Military Cemetery. June the 19th, 1999, at the dedication of the Benjamin Welch Owens statue in Lothian, Maryland. Location in Mount Calvary, Southern Episcopal Church.
Ready?
Okay. We'll ask Mr. Shepherd to come in. You'll hand it to him.
Beautiful church, as you can see.
More up there with the signal. Yes. There's your drive. Thank you.
Oh, we got here just in time.
Yeah.
Otherwise we would have been preempted by
Oh,
reserve.
you do that so well, Andrew.
I was wondering if he's going to make us get up.
Yeah. Mr. Carpenter, you know Mr. Ed Hall?
No,
Hey,
Andy
how you
Carpenter.
doing?
Nice to meet you, sir. Nice to see you.
Ed is the one person in this county that's responsible for us having a wonderful library system.
Thank you, sir.
It's true. It's true.
That's fine. He wants her to sit up front. I'm going, no, I want her to sit in back. And he goes, why? I said, she sits here. Maybe take a picture of her in profile with this statue. I'm trying to cut down the collateral damage.
Okay.
A lot of controversy, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I haven't seen Ron for years. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know he retired.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But still keeping busy, I'm sure.
Well, he's with Janet Owens for 3 days a week. He's working for the county administration as a financial advisor.
Okay.
So I don't know how much longer they'll do it, you know, just trying to help her, you know.
Get him out of your hair.
That's right. Helps me too.
Does he have hobbies and things like that to keep him busy?
Oh yeah, we like, well, we walk the dogs or take our trips or
Yeah.
Are these taken? One that I'm aware of. Okay.
This one's taken.
Yeah, I knew somebody was thinking.
Yeah. It's interesting, people that are here.
I'm afraid that one's taken.
This one's taken.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that.
Tell him to get over here and keep his seat, right?
Can I get Ron Moore to come up to the podium, please? Ron Moore. Billy, you want to get the speakers to come on up? We'll get started.
I had to fight the people off of your seat, Robert.
Oh my.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just up front if you don't mind. You should, if you feel more comfortable, that's fine.
That's a nice time.
I'll get
Okay.
up.
Turn it around now that we're looking this way.
Welcome. My name's Carter Shepard. I am a member of the Benjamin Welch Owens Monument Fund. He's the gentleman that owns the land across the street, who has been kind enough to allow us to park our cars there. Thank you, Mr. Earl. I want to recognize and thank all of our reenactors that are here today to make...
I said, well, sure, Bill, let me get to work on it. State Highway laughed at me, then I laughed at myself. So we're here today on this ground to dedicate this monument. You know, if you looked at the program, you'll notice the spelling of my name, Owings, O-W-I-N-G-S. But the truth of the matter is that if you check back to Wales, from whence the Owings family came, the spellings were O-W-E-N-S, O-W-I-N, O-W-E-N, and so on and so forth. However, in this part of my district, I spend a lot of time correcting people. Even Carter said Owens. And so I always like to correct as to who I really am. But today, it's okay to go with Owens. I don't mind that at all. The Right Reverend Peter A. Compton Caputo. Reverend?
Please bow your heads for prayer. Gracious and Heavenly Father, on this day thou hast filled the world with beauty. Open our eyes, we beseech thee, to behold thy gracious hand in all thy works. Bless and hallow this monument, and may be we ever mindful of those gifts that thou hast given to us. Bless all in this place, dear Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Forward. March. Color guard. Halt. Forward. March. Color guard. Halt. Front. One pace forward. March. Present arm. Shoulder arms. Order arms. Parade. Rest.
We have, on this day, in Baltimore, according to your program, Benjamin Welch Owens sprang into history June 19, 18.
Preface my remarks by saying that just from a point of history, many of you may not know this, but that in the 19th century there were many wars, but the Confederate infantry has been cited as the finest example of foot infantry for the 19th century. And when we got ready to fight that war, when Lincoln was looking for who to command the Union Army, the person that he had selected and had asked to command the Union Army was a then Colonel, Robert E. Lee. So, you know, I'm happy to be here as a part of the unfolding
of a chapter, no, the chapter in America's story. Today, we're celebrating the efforts of a great, heroic American, a man of achievement that the Cheney and Owens family can look to with pride now and for generations to come. That, however, is not the only story that we celebrate here today. The great American storyteller Alex Haley taught us in his world-famous book, Roots, that, as was previously said, that the strength of the human spirit to overcome adversity comes in large extent from maintaining a strong family connection. And
Vice President of the Civil War Trust, but more than that, he was a member of the Maryland House of Delegates. He served 2 terms as the county executive of Anne Arundel County. He was the former secretary of the Department of Transportation. He currently teaches on history, specifically the Civil War era, at the community college, I believe, Jim, at the community college. Ice cream salesman and Sunday school teacher. Please welcome Jim Lighthizer.
Thank you, George, and some of that's true, what he said.
Some of it.
It is a pleasure and an honor to be here today, and I thank George for that introduction. I would be very remiss if I didn't recognize right off 2 people who, in a general sense and in a very, very direct sense, are responsible for today. First is a gentleman in a general sense who is responsible today, and that's a gentleman that I count as my mentor, at least in the area of Anne Arundel County history, a man that is the most knowledgeable man when it comes, I don't think Will would disagree with me, when it comes to knowledge of Anne Arundel County history of any era, Civil War, before, after, now. And that's Jack Kelbaugh. Where's Jack? Give Jack a round of applause. And to honor an ideal. The man, of course, is Benjamin Welch Owens. But in a larger sense, the ideal is even more important. And that ideal that we have in this country and have had throughout our nation's history is that of a citizen soldier. A man who, when there comes a time in his life when there is an opportunity, a challenge, puts his life and his liberty on the line to fight for an ideal that he believes in. And there are very few larger examples, or certainly very few more remarkable examples in our history than Benjamin Welch Owens. In April of 1861, when he poked his head out from underneath that blanket of obscurity in Baltimore and caused a wagon load of sand to fall on the railroad tracks when the Yankees were trying to move troops through the city, thereby helping precipitate a riot, get himself arrested for inciting the riot, and later for treason. Benjamin Welch Owens, in a certain sense, perhaps not very noble, stood up for something he believed in. But when he finally got out of jail, and when he finally was able to get his freedom back, he voted with his feet and went south. And he joined the Army of Northern Virginia. I believe it was June 1 of 1863. And about 2 weeks later, as a member of the Maryland 1st Artillery, he was called to a little bridge at Stevenson's Depot, Virginia, when General Milroy's Union Army was attacking with some 6,000 men, a division, Confederate division of approximately 1,200 men. Welch's artillery was ordered to that bridge and to set up at, quote, close musket range his cannon. Over the course of the next hour or thereabout, there were 16 cannoneers and 14 were shot down, and then finally a 15th. And in the end, for a brief period of time, one man stood on that bridge with that cannon, holding off approximately 6,000 Union soldiers
to help save the Army of Northern Virginia. And that man was Benjamin Welch Owens. A remarkable act of personal courage, but I believe, as I stated earlier, what is more remarkable is what he was, and that is a citizen soldier.
At the end of today's ceremonies, there will be another monument, the newest War Between the States monument the world has seen. It will not be the last. So ask yourselves, why are you here today? Why did you come to this rural corner of Maryland and stand under God's sunshine to honor someone who's been dead since the early days of World War I? I will suggest to you that you have a love of history. You certainly have a respect for heritage, and I add all kinds of heritage, and that's what we're all about. And you certainly have an affinity for heroes. But I submit to you today that when it comes to heroes, and heroes are few amongst us, it seems, it's a virtue, heroism, that when it comes to heroes, who do you think about? Who are your heroes? The media would serve up an endless variety of entertainers, sports superstars, perhaps even politicians. But quietly, ask yourself, who is my hero? Just remember, don't confuse heroism with mere fame. But you see, most heroes are not famous. Until 7, 8 years ago, few people had heard of Benjamin Welch Owens. And that's one of the reasons you're here today, to honor that private soldier that Jim just talked about. He could have been anyone, but this was a man who not only did his duty, but went far and beyond the call of that duty. You will want to know about this man. Welch Owens is from right here, Anne Arundel County. His people lived here, are buried here, and I understand today some of his collateral descendants are here. Growing up in rural southern Maryland, he took an avid interest in the war as it was being played out. As the noise of war got closer and closer, he watched events, he could see what was coming, and he identified with the South.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the conclusion of the final song, I will direct your attention to the cannon behind you. It will be fired, so forewarning you. That does conclude the formal program, ladies and gentlemen. There is refreshments down here. There are artifacts.
Pretty in. He's buried somewhere else? Or?
No, he's not buried. I'm not sure. He might be buried.
Over there?
Yeah.
Terrific ceremony.
I'll be goddamn. Frederick, Elizabeth, Marianne, Henry Byron, Joseph, Adrian. So 1, 2, 3. This is Joseph Adrian. He died in 1902.
Boy, he lived a good while.
Doesn't say so.
Well, I
We could have got into artillery, cavalry.
When the First World War
James M. Anderson.
he went for one of them. I don't know.
I can't find it yet. Let me keep moving here. I've got over here.
Fortunately, I can bring the stones up close.
Doing it from the DAR or anybody? That being true, if it wasn't for that, you can make that turn very easily. Well, please go ahead and buy it.
Yeah.
It's close.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, it's a shame that nobody keeps those cemeteries up.
Go to hell. Yeah, very quickly. do that?
Pardon me?
You jumped the fence?
Yeah.
Nice to be young.
Colonel's in there. If you see the terms for wives. God, he outlived her 4 years.
Can you get this, or do you want to get it of him in his younger days?
There's old Chris Gouge.
Okay, in his younger days?
Yeah, right after the war.
Okay.
There's the Lizzie.
Sinclair Wright started this. The issue is compatibility, not similarity. And you got
12 years old, he's now.
Revolutionary War general. Notice the term relic of John Hammond, her wife. Christ, you made it difficult for me to get that moving, you bastard. When you look at it, you say, God damn, oh, have you ever... This is Arthur Bond's home.
Well, they got there's really strong, intelligent women that are in the Historical Society of fact. One. You know, he's not the only one who's married Calvin, Agatha Aaron, Cordella Swanson. They're really great, determined women. And all.
Linthicum Burial Ground.
Life interrupted. The die young.
Because I've seen it, like even Sarah Shipley, she was a Linthicum. I was Sarah Linthicum.
Was he ever captured in the war?
I don't know.
You know why I say that?
What?
Because of
Friendship Cemetery. Right next to BWI Airport. Now, Jack, what kind of relationship would Jefferson Davis Phelps been to you?
Cousin.
Cousin?
Yeah. All these people really are my cousins, one way or the other. Middle name and first name. Look, he was... Well, this was a very brilliant young sister and father. Took the Robert E. Lee name also.